So when you walk into a major retailer, and let's be honest, we all do this, and you pick up a smart device, a TV, a cheap little set-top box, maybe even a digital picture frame, are you buying a convenience for your home? Or are you accidentally buying a compromised device that could be used as a weapon?
It sounds a bit extreme, but that really is the reality we're looking at today.
Okay, let's unpack this. We've got a really challenging stack of sources this week. We're looking at some brand new security reports covering massive infrastructure failures, some really candid policy admissions from major governments, huge data breaches.
And even a few surprising attempts at AI defense. It's a lot to get through.
It is, but our goal here is to really synthesize it for you.
What's so fascinating is that the problems we're going to talk about today, the ones that lead to these massive breaches and, millions of compromised devices in homes, they're rarely new technical problems. These are persistent, systemic issues. They're rooted in regulation, in legacy systems, and just basic failures of risk management.
Our mission today is simple. We're cutting through the noise to figure out exactly how often the security world leaves you, the consumer, the small business owner, basically holding the bag. We want you to understand what you need to know to stay ahead.
Because it feels like no one is protecting your front door anymore.
Exactly.
And we're going to start right there in your living room where this whole systemic failure really begins. We need to look at the immediate consequences of this regulatory failure.
Let's start with what was supposed to be the great hope for consumer security. The U.S. government's voluntary program to create a security trust mark for IoT devices.
Right. The idea was that if you saw that mark on a box, you'd know the device had met at least some basic security standards.
That was the promise.
And the lead administrator for that was going to be Underwriters Laboratories, or UL, a huge testing organization. The goal was to just gently push manufacturers to stop shipping these incredibly insecure products.
But that program is now, and this is a quote, dead in the water.
It is, and the reason why is almost more frustrating than the failure itself. It really speaks to this supply chain nightmare we're all in.
So what happened?
An FCC investigation found that UL has deep ties to China, including operating testing labs right there in the country.
Yeah.
And the immediate concern was, how could a Chinese-based lab objectively hold a Chinese company accountable for a major security failure, especially one that affects U.S. consumers?
So UL just pulled out.
They withdrew from the program entirely, and the implication of that is immense. Replacing them isn't like just hiring a new contractor.
You're talking about an organization with the global scale to do actual device testing. It's not something you can just spin up overnight.
Exactly. And while that policy vacuum exists, the threat just steps right in. The most tangible consequence of this failure is the rise of threats like the Kim Wolf botnet.
Okay, tell us about Kim Wolf. What is it, and what kind of scale are we talking about?
Kim Wolf is a really nasty piece of work. It's estimated to have infected around 2 million set-top TV boxes.
2 million.
2 million. And it also targets cheap digital picture frames. These devices usually have permanent hard-coded passwords or no passwords at all. They're trivial to compromise.
So you have 2 million infected devices just sitting inside people's homes and businesses. That's a huge hidden army.
That's precisely the problem. Hackers use these millions of distributed endpoints to launch these pay-per-use cyber attacks against U.S. companies, even government agencies. Some estimates suggest there could be up to 12 million infected consumer IoT devices out there being used for attacks or to proxy the internet.
What does that mean, to proxy the internet?
It means that if you're a homeowner with an infected TV box, the attacker is using your home internet bandwidth to route their traffic. So when the FBI tries to trace the attack, it just looks like it's coming from millions of suburban homes.
Not from a centralized server overseas.
Exactly. It makes it nearly impossible to trace and shut down the real attacker.
And the sources said this botnet is shockingly resilient.
Oh, incredibly. Authorities took down one generation of Kim Wolf, but the hackers, and this is a quote, reconstituted their network, reestablishing their control of millions of devices in a matter of days.
In days.
They just repopulate the compromised devices instantly because the underlying vulnerability in the hardware never gets fixed.
So the key takeaway for you, the listener, is really clear. If the program designed to vet security dies, you are completely on your own.
That's right. And we should probably mention the FBI's controversial actions here. They've previously sent shutdown commands or even reprogrammed people's IoT devices without telling them.
Hacking into private citizens' homes to stop a bigger attack.
It just underlines how desperate the situation is.
So if policy is failing us at the consumer level, let's pivot. What's happening in the major Western governments? Are they doing any better?
We're seeing a major reality check starting in the UK. They made this really candid admission that their whole cybersecurity approach for years was just flawed. And they warned they won't meet their target of securing all government organizations by 2030.
So they're admitting the old strategy failed. What's the new plan?
Well, the diagnosis is basically a reliance on legacy technology, technical debt. GCHQ reported that attacks quadrupled last year, mostly because their systems are built on foundations from, in some cases, the 1970s.
The 70s, wow.
Yeah. So the proposed cure is this new government cyber action plan. And it sounds like a fundamental shift away from just offering guidance.
How so?
They're moving to a much more mandatory model. It looks a bit like the US DoD's CMMC program. It includes strict new contractual requirements for suppliers.
So if you want to work with the government, you have to meet these standards. No more suggestions.
That's the idea. But, that's where the skepticism comes in. They are trying to solve the talent problem, proposing a new government cyber profession after their old pay scales were apparently laughed out loud at by the market.
That doesn't surprise me.
And they're trying to enforce accountability by making senior leaders responsible for cyber outcomes, though the source admits the details on that are still light.
Meanwhile, here in the U.S., the NSA has been facing its own instability, but more on the leadership side.
Yeah, constant turnover at the top. They haven't had a Senate-confirmed leader in the current administration, which means key people leave, you get a rotation of placeholder leaders that cost you institutional memory.
But there was one bright spot, right? New appointment.
Yes, Timothy Kosiba as NSA Deputy Director. It's a non-Senate confirmed technical role, but he has incredibly strong technical credibility. He was in TAO, the Tailored Access Operations Group, the ones who create the software and hardware hacks, and he was Chief of Computer Network Operations.
So he knows his stuff. Deep technical expertise.
Which should hopefully help stabilize things internally.
Keeping your systems safe is super important as businesses rely more and more on digital systems, and that's where turnkey cybersecurity can really help.
Yeah, we're here to help small businesses just like yours make sure they're safe and sound in this crazy world of cybersecurity. And we offer a whole suite of services specifically tailored for you. So that's ensuring CMMC compliance and doing penetration testing. We also run vulnerability scans, and we can help you develop a comprehensive risk assessment.
And it doesn't stop there, right?
No, it doesn't.
We handle incident response, should the unfortunate happen, and we guide you through migrations like GCC. We just want to make sure your transitions are smooth and that you're secure.
It's all about peace of mind, right? You focus on what you do best, running your business, and we'll make sure that your digital world is safe and sound.
Moving from policy to technology, let's talk about the AI double-edged sword.
Yeah.
It seems like the threat is evolving way faster than governments can regulate it.
Absolutely. And that's led to some really creative defensive ideas like data poisoning.
This is fascinating. What is it?
It's research coming out of China and Singapore. They claim to have a tool that injects plausible but fake data into an AI's knowledge graph. So if a hacker steals your proprietary data, it's basically useless because it's contaminated.
And the claims are pretty impressive. Authorized users with a key see no problems, but the hackers see accuracy drop to, what was it, a bit over 5%?
A massive drop. And what's really intriguing is the claim about resilience. Even if attackers know the data is poisoned and try to clean it, the system supposedly retains over 80% of the pollution. It just ruins the model.
It sounds like a magic bullet, but is it?
Well, there's a pretty hot debate. A Harvard cryptographer said that data poisoning has never worked well in the real world. But a U.S. consultant in the field disagrees and says it could work, especially as a deterrent.
So the jury's still out.
Very much so. But while defense is being debated, the offense is already moving ahead.
What are the new threats we should be watching for?
AI is moving beyond just simple phishing. The new predictions involve AI-driven manipulation of your backup and disaster recovery systems.
So they corrupt your backups before they hit you with ransomware.
Exactly. You lose your clean recovery point. And then there's the synthetic data leak idea.
And that one is particularly nasty.
It really is. Ransomware gangs could start using extortion fueled by synthetic data. They just make up plausible-sounding sensitive data, leak it, and then force you to prove it isn't real.
That completely shifts the burden of proof onto the victim. It feels fundamentally unfair.
It is. And in the meantime, states aren't waiting for the federal government. Texas, California, New York, they're all implementing their own AI laws, creating this patchwork of regulation.
And the hardware giants are making moves too. NVIDIA just released its Nemotron 3 language model for free.
Which is a brilliant competitive move. They're encouraging users to run the model on local NVIDIA hardware, basically competing with their own customers like OpenAI and tying users even more tightly into their ecosystem.
So the threat models are getting more complex, but for the average person, the result is depressingly simple. More breaches.
And the scale is just huge. A-Flat confirmed data loss on 22 million customers, and they stopped the breach in hours, but the data was still stolen.
Speed isn't everything.
Not at all. Then Prosper Marketplace leaked data on 13 million people. We're talking SSNs, bank accounts, passports. All told, that's data on roughly 40 million people lost in a very short time.
And the vendor risk is a huge part of this. The Pornhub and Mixpanel case is a perfect example.
It really is. The breach was at Mixpanel, a data analytics vendor. And even used Mixpanel since 2021.
So it was old, forgotten data.
Years old data. Email addresses, location, video names, search keywords. That's a goldmine for extorting public figures. It links their identity to their activity, even years later.
And that risk is compounded by this invisible shift in identity management.
The explosion of non-human identities, the statistic is just staggering. AI processes, virtual machines, automated systems, they now outnumber human identities by 80 to 1.
Why should you, the listener, care about an 80 to 1 ratio?
Because these non-human identities are the next frontier. They don't have human oversight, they often have high privileges, and they can move across a system and download an entire database instantly.
So compromising one of them can lead to a catastrophic failure.
Way faster and on a bigger scale than compromising a single human account.
Okay, on a slightly brighter note, there are some privacy wins happening. California seems to be leading the way.
They certainly are. They launched a new state-run website called DROP. It lets residents force hundreds of data brokers to scrub their personal data every 45 days.
And there are real penalties.
Right. That's the key. $200 per deletion request per day for failure to comply. It's cheaper for them to just do it than to ignore the request.
We also have that ongoing fight with smart TVs. Texas suing Hisense.
Yeah, that lawsuit alleges Hisense was watching users watch TV every 500 milliseconds. That's twice a second. And storing the data even when the TV was offline, then selling it. A judge has temporarily suspended that data collection, which is a major win.
We have to just pause for a second on the most absurd story, though. The $339 trillion hack.
It's a wild one. A gaming company got hacked, but the hackers didn't steal the virtual currency. They gave free money to every single user.
Every user.
And the amount was so huge, it created this fatal, irreversible flush to the company's revenue stream. Their only option was to literally pull the power switch on the entire platform, shut the whole game down.
An existential threat forcing a complete shutdown.
Yeah.
But let's look at a much more sober threat. Critical infrastructure and geopolitics.
If we connect this all to the bigger picture, you see this really disturbing development in Russia's cyber strategy. They aren't just tolerating cybercrime groups anymore.
They're managing them.
They're actively managing and guiding them to attack foes, sometimes even taking a share of the proceeds. It elevates the threat to a whole new level.
And they're targeting critical infrastructure.
Correct. Specifically using unpatched network edge devices, the routers and firewalls exposed to the internet. It's also been linked to the attribution of 2 recent undersea cable cuts.
Which is why government warning systems are so vital. And this brings us to maybe the most critical risk for companies right now. The loss of that CISA warning program.
This is just a tragedy of bureaucracy. CISA had a key employee who was the linchpin of this proactive warning system. This person would look at threat data and actually warn companies that they were being actively targeted.
A genuine lifesaver for private enterprise.
And that employee is gone, and the program is, quote, toast. The employee quit when forced to move to FEMA.
And CISA's response.
Shockingly simple. There's no law which forces us to warn companies that they're under attack. So that program is gone. The burden is now entirely back on private companies.
A staggering admission.
It is. And it highlights why the Senate Intelligence Committee is pushing the White House to address the risks in open source software, which the government itself is a huge user of.
So what does this all mean? The security perimeter is collapsing at every level. From your smart TV to critical government warnings. We've seen the death of federal IoT standards, major government policy resets, AI-driven extortion. The knowledge you really need to internalize today is this. You have to assume your cheap consumer devices are exposed, your vendor data is years old and compromised, and critically, you might not get a warning when an attack is imminent.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, just think back to the UK's central problem, technical debt. They are losing the cyber war because of 1970s code. So given the speed of modern threats, Aflac lost data on 22 million customers in hours, Kim Wolf rebuilt in days. We have to ask, if our own government is losing the war due to technical debt and adversaries are now actively managing cybercrime groups, what is the true national security price tag for failing to replace that legacy tech?
What happens when technical debt becomes a fatal national vulnerability?
That's the question we leave you with.